Shalom, welcome to another episode of Inspiration from Zion. I'm Jonathan Feldstein, and I have the privilege of being your host, coming to you from the Judean mountains here in Israel. I like to refer to it as the original Bible Belt. Inspiration from Zion is a program of the Genesis 123 Foundation, whose mission is to build bridges between Jews and Christians with Israel in ways that are new, unique, and meaningful. I pray that you will find this all of those. Through this program, we're excited to connect you to people and stories in and relating to Israel to give you a window to look through, experiencing aspects of life here that you might not otherwise know about. We want this to be interactive, so please be in touch with us at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com and send along any questions and any comments about any topic anytime. Or you can reach us at genesis123.co or follow and like Inspiration from Zion on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This is the third part of a monthly series called What Are We Thinking? I have assembled a panel of friends and fellow undecided Israeli voters from the right to the left, from their 20s, or Mark, are you in your 30s already? 30s
I'm
until
in,
their
I'm in 30s.
30s until their 70s. All of us are immigrants. Some of us for several decades, some of us for just a few, and we are all confronting and hope through this conversation, maybe as self therapy, to shed light on who it is that we will vote for in just over 2.5 months. The election is scheduled for October
27.
27th. Yeah, and what was I going to say? There was one other important piece. Oh, and if you're joining for the first time, welcome. Please do use the Q&A feature to ask questions, as this is a live webinar. But also, if you are following for the first time and did not know that there were such programs, please be in touch. Or if you're following this after the fact, and we'll be glad to send you invitations to our future live programs. So I don't forget, the next of these will be on Wednesday, the 16th of September at the same time, 8 p.m. Israel, 1 p.m. Eastern in the United States, and where Judy is noon Central Time. Um, I'm going to avoid all of the introductions because if you're not following, then you need to go back and revisit the previous episodes that we've recorded. And because with now currently 5 panelists here, and a sixth Yehuda Pash who's not able to join us today, it gets a little unwieldy to start introducing everyone in their respective ways. But I really am grateful, and this is totally out of any sequence, to have Erica and Batya and Arnie, Mark and Rolene here, so we can begin to cast light on some of the additional or continual items that relate to why we are all undecided. And actually, I want to use that as the jumping off point. We've now been doing this. We skipped a month because I was traveling, but since May, this will be our third conversation. I found them real interesting and enlightening. I haven't come out of them any more decided, or for that matter, more undecided. But I'm curious from all of you. First of all, are any of you more or less decided or closer to making a decision, or have made that decision about who you're going to vote for? And how has this conversation, albeit that this is only the third of them, and the WhatsApp chat that we sometimes blow up on given days on certain topics, how has that affected your thinking? Erica, you're on my upper left corner. Why don't you get started?
Okay, well, I definitely did some reading as suggested before this webinar. Hello, everyone. And I feel like I'm a little more decided than I was. I came in with a good general idea of wanting to vote for a Zionist kind of centrist party, maybe leaning a little more to the right with security. But there was an article about Gadi Eisenkot of Yashar, and he's a former IDF chief of staff. And also he sustained some losses during the war, some very personal losses. His son, his nephew, and no, was it his son? His grandson, his nephew,
His
and
son
then
and two
again,
nephews.
Right. So everybody feels like and he's been a public servant for so long, and everyone feels like he sacrificed a lot. And you get a sense that he's a decent person. And I think people have been thinking about him in the same way that they might think of Naftali Bennett and yet Yair Lapid. But there was an article that went into deep analysis about how Eisenkot might be a little less experienced than Bennett in a certain way, or able to relate to Trump, and also how his views are much more left-leaning than they may first appear, or he's much more likely to capitulate as opposed to see like things through in terms of a war, or in terms of deterrence, or so. I thought that I was going to go leaning toward Bennett as opposed to Eisenkot, but I wasn't decided, and I'm still not decided. I'd be a fool to say that I'm decided. We have 2.5 months to go, which is an eternity.
Yeah.
Everything can change, and there's so much news every single day. Um, but from the start, I've thought that that makes sense, and I'll wait until I get to the ballot box. But for now, I'm pretty much there. But we have two and a
Okay.
half months.
Okay. Arnie, you just emphasized some point that Erica made. What's your level of undecidedness, and how are these conversations, both online and via our WhatsApp, having any influence or impact?
Yeah, it's enjoyable to be able to talk it out with other people outside of my immediate circle. So that's always helpful. Um, I've been doing more research since, as Erica said, she read an article I've been reading, also been checking up on. For me, it's not even necessarily the head of any given party, but who's on their top 10 list. And if they get into the Knesset, it's by percentage of vote received is how many of their candidates get into the Knesset. And so I want to know who's number two, three, four, five, and six. Uh, and it's been very interesting to learn about some of the people who are out there. I think I mentioned in one of the previous podcasts, I really prefer to vote for a person than a party. And so I
Yep.
try to find a person who is, I believe, 100% trustworthy. My definition, but I would want to be a friend with somebody who I could turn to in time of need. Just a really good, reliable individual who then can carry forth an agenda. And we've had a few over the years in the Knesset. It's not that every politician is horrible. Um, and so I've been doing research on the people just to see who's there. And there are some very credible and incredible people on some of the lists.
Okay. Well, I'll be your friend if you need anything. Rolene, Rolene, how about you? You missed our first conversation, but jumped in with both feet in the second one, and yeah, I'd love to know where do you stand, and how are these chats impacting you at all?
I'm pretty decided. You know, I tend to look at who is on the list and also what the platform points are. And whoever's platform, along with the particular candidates, most aligned with my values and most aligned with where I see us holding currently and where I hope to go, that enforces or informs who I am likely to vote for. So I'm pretty much decided. Unless something drastic happens in the next 2 or so months, I pretty much know who I'm voting for.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Mark, you're nodding.
No, yeah, I like that to what Arnie said before,
Okay.
actually, about supporting specific people, because I'm from the left, and with the left, you don't have a wide variety of parties, and you also really don't have that much of a chance of having the left be in the being in the coalition. But what you do have is because of how the Israeli government's structured, you have specific people that can actually get jobs on different committees, even if they're from the opposition
Hmm.
party. So when you look at the left, what the left has to offer, you have the Democratic and you have Hadash, which are the main Jewish left-wing parties that are running. And in these two parties, you have a lot of very strong people on the list. and who actually have had a history of being very good in the certain committees. So therefore, I'm really leaning towards now with Democratic with the certain people on the list who are very good in the committees, with having committee jobs, and that really, supports my decision to vote for them really in the elections. And
Okay,
I think
thank
also
you.
these discussions are actually very good because most of the discussions now are on social media and not actually face to face with real people, but rather a lot of bots who are on like Twitter and Facebook and all of these. So it's very good to actually talk to real people about the elections.
All right, good, excellent. Thank you, Batya.
Okay, I am less decided than before. I'm more depressed, and I have the extra burden, which I have a feeling I'm not even going to participate in, of Likud primaries.
You're a member
I
of
have a
Likud?
very what? Yeah, we've
You're a
we've been
member?
forever.
Okay.
So, and I think that even if I don't vote for Likud, this is because I don't think I've ever voted for Likud. It's important because it's such a dominant party in the country for since the since 1977, to have some influence about who will be in the top ranks and the safe seats. So what's happened is I have a very simple priority in choosing my party and politicians. And I have not heard of a single political party that uses that as their campaign, as their aim, as what they say they want. I want a real victory. A real victory isn't mowing the lawn,
You're
which
talking
is
about militarily, not
yes,
not
we've been at
electoral.
war. We've been attacked every year or two, ever since, for sure, ever since Benjamin Netanyahu became prime minister. And we've never had a victory. Um, there has been no surrender. We have battles, we have clever little things like with the beepers, and a true victory where you get rid of the existing government, you bring in someone else to govern, like World War II at the end. We have nobody. I have not heard a single party that is their main platform.
Platform.
I think with just
And
one,
in the
Batya.
nobody talks. They use the word victory. Likud had this they call it the Forum for Victory, but they're basically it's all of the same. It's not anything. It's not a real victory.
Okay, okay.
I
Arnie,
want.
what were you going to say?
Yeah, Batya, I just want to clarify something you said to the audience and people who'll be watching this later. Is you talked about a change in government, et cetera. You mean outside of Israel? You're talking about specifically in Gaza with the Palestinian Authority and in Lebanon with Hezbollah, et cetera, and that there's been no change there
Well, first
in
of all,
20
they
years.
have nobody surrendered. You know that, like
Yes.
a victory only exists if the other side surrenders. If a government says, see, everything's fine, it's going to be quiet now, that's not a victory. And
Okay,
that's why
Okay.
every year or two we're attacked.
okay. So
Yeah.
I'm
Batya,
a
you're
CPA's daughter. I'm sorry.
for this coming election, your bumper sticker is "In search of victory."
Yeah, real
And
victory.
okay,
I
real
want
victory. Okay, Erica, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to quickly respond to what Batya said, and I would love that too, but I don't even look for it anymore because I think we have to be realistic in this age of social media. It's impossible to have a victory, a decisive victory, it seems, without that, with the eyes of the world on us, and I don't think there's anyone who would do that. Um, Unless like Ben Gvir pushed a red button or something. Itamar Ben Gvir, who's known as a little more extremist, and that's a crazy scenario I just made up. But as much as I would love that, and I would definitely vote for someone like that, I don't look for that because I don't think it's possible. But I am looking for someone who aligns on security. And I want to add, going back to your original question, that this webinar is helpful because I also read about how these little parties, these Zionist parties, have cropped up and are trying to be the kingmakers that are going to be the ones to seal a coalition, or are they having a real effect? And I have to say, even though I like a few of the people that are in the various parties, and I say certain names that I would be happy if they were in the coalition, that doesn't sway me. I mean, little parties
Wow.
crop up and die every election. I feel like it's almost like a little mosquito I have to swat away. Like,
Wow.
just because it's what do you really want? Who do you really want to join? And just tell us right now, rather than like taking away our attention, because a lot of times there's an agenda there. They just want to join another party and get a better location on the
Ah.
list. So
Well, I
don't
want
take,
to come. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm just like,
I,
don't take away votes from, a government that could really work. So, because I'm really in search of a government that is Zionist. So please
but
just work
but you also
together.
said that could really work, and that's I think part of some of the questions that we're mostly having. But I do want to get into. I hope the bulk of our conversation today, or my anticipation, is going to be about these new parties that have cropped up. And by the way, for those who are not familiar with the Israeli electoral system, the fake screen that you see behind me is, I believe, backwards, but it's the actual
No,
picture
it's
of the
okay.
actual.
It's okay.
It's okay. The actual pieces of paper, slips of paper that we put inside an envelope and then put inside another envelope and then put into a cardboard box, which is how we vote here. We kill a lot of trees in the process. And as Erica said, there's so many of these. I don't know which of these parties that are on the little slip represented on the slips of paper that are behind me, and I don't remember which election that was from. But I don't know how many are going to be standing in this coming election and how many new ones we're going to have. So anyway, I thank you for sharing. It's very interesting to see more. Rolene, you're pretty sure who you're going to vote for. Erica, you're more sure. Batya, you're less sure. And Mark, I like at least your thinking and rationale in terms of recognizing, although it's not impossible at all that the Democrat team, the Democrats Party, would be in a coalition. But we'll jump into that, and I'm sure you'd like to see that. In the past, I know, and forgive me, I should have, if I was a really, really good host, I would have gone back and listened to both of the previous conversations and taken sound bites and given them back to you. Arnie, you mentioned a point earlier that has resonated through our conversations, that we're looking for people, the right people. And that is a factor in terms of who we might vote for, regardless of what parties they're in, or as you said, where they stand on a list. We've also talked about polls, and I'm pretty sure that many, if not most of us, have said, yeah, the polls aren't so important. I'm going to go with my instinct. I'm going to go with who I feel is going to be the best. But maybe I'm projecting, because I feel for myself that the polls are indeed swaying me, particularly as it relates to the new parties that I want to get into today. And I'm curious if whether we've discussed it or not, or opening the conversation, it seems like every day some media outlet is doing a different poll at this point, and the numbers aren't swaying that much differently. Certainly, the right wing sites are giving a little bit more of a tilt to a stronger vote for the existing coalition, and others not. But I'm curious today, as we speak on the 12th of August, 2.5 months before the vote. How are you following the polls? Do you care about the polls? As we've been looking at the who to vote for specifically with the last few weeks, the new parties being registered, is that influencing you? Anyone?
I think the
I think
polls.
it's very funny the
I,
way they have it. It sounds like a horse race, like we're watching Seabiscuit. And this is ahead and that's behind and this is closer. And it's a poll. And we don't even know who's going to be running with whom, because many times the smaller parties get together and they run as a block so that they lose fewer of their excess votes. And there's more of a chance that even if neither party could have made it alone, they can get in together. So
Okay.
I'm not interested in polls.
No polls. Okay. Arnie, you were going to say
I was gonna
something?
say, I think polls are a good snapshot of where things stand. I'm less convinced that they're an accurate prediction of what the election results will be. Certainly, as Erica had said, 2.5 months away is that's far out from where we are actually going to see what's happening, because any change the polls can't really predict. What if there's a higher voter turnout in a certain area that traditionally votes for X, Y, or Z, or lower voter turnout? Or what if a certain party, the smaller parties, cross the threshold to get into the Knesset with I think it's 3.25% of the
Correct.
vote. Somebody only has 3.2, they're not getting in. Those votes, what happens to them? Where they wind up being seated. And if somebody, well, the point is, I think that a lot of these issues only happen in the last week or two before the elections, where we kind of see what's really happening. So the polls are nice. It's fun. Play the game, add up my favorite, to get the 61 votes needed to get to the majority of the Knesset. Can I do it for 61? It's a narrow coalition. Can I get to 63 or 4? Would that be better? It's fun to play with, but I don't take it too seriously.
Not so much. Mark, were you going to say something? How is it?
Uh, yeah, I'm just really enjoying watching Bennett and Eisenkot, compete against each other. Who's going to be the front runner for the anti-BB coalition? That's something that I really enjoy watching. Like that's what I'm really, and also to see who is not passing the threshold is also a lot of fun to see because you really get a good indication of who's going to end up merging in the end, in the last
Merging in
month.
the end? Well,
Yeah.
can they merge in the last month, or they have? There's another, I think, 2 weeks or so that new parties can emerge. But then, when do they? Before all these things that are behind me are printed, someone's got to, and that's going to be coming at the tail end of our of Sukkot, of our holidays. When do they have? Until when do they have to decide to merge together and pull resources? Bennett and Eisenkot. Do you know? Does anyone know?
That's a
No?
good question.
Okay. All right. We'll have
That's
to
what we
research it.
should have checked.
No,
Okay.
I think
All
it's
right.
Maybe
I think it's
somebody had Google. There must be
Yeah,
a
I think
search
it's what?
engine.
I think it's 3 weeks before the election. I think then you have to hand in the final 120.
Okay. All right.
That's when you could decide who's going to be a technical block, but that's what's going to probably happen in the end. What a
Got it.
technical
Okay.
block is
Yeah, is
yeah.
that it's not a merge.
Yeah, it's not a
It's
merge
like,
merge.
it's like
Uh,
two
uh, uh,
two one next to the other.
an
Yeah,
alliance. It's an
an
alliance
alliance.
that doesn't bring them together, but allows them to pool votes. And as Arnie mentioned, well, Arnie, you mentioned it's a scenario before where if a party doesn't pass the threshold, but then there's also what's called the wasted votes, the number of votes over and above that are required for each seat. And if someone gets 20,000 votes more than their fourth seat or fifth seat, but don't make it to the next level, then those are considered wasted votes unless they
Well,
merge
no,
together.
There's a
no, no, no,
special
no.
agreement, and it's called and it's a
It,
sharing
That's separate.
and
it, yeah,
yeah,
it's
so
the
so it's not
leftovers.
totally put in the pot.
Yeah,
They
it's the
they combine
leftover
them
votes get.
together.
There's
Correct.
every two parties can agree to take each other's leftover votes if they pass
Yes.
a certain
Yeah.
number.
Yeah. Erica, go ahead.
It's a little complicated.
Yes.
I agree with Arnie mostly about the polls. The one party I am interested in seeing, we just emerging, is the new Haredi party, which
Ah,
is a platform about serving in the IDF. That is a major issue, I would think, to most Israelis these days, whether you support Haredi service or don't support it, and that is going to influence votes in a big way. And so, if this party could somehow be part of the government and find a way for moderate Haredim to serve or to find a way to just resolve the question in a less violent way, I would really want them to be in the government, but it's a question of if they're going to go over the threshold. So that I would really want to know, because I'd hesitate to vote for them, even if I would want to, because I wouldn't want a wasted vote.
But if the polls were showing that they were a solid 4, 5, 6, would you throw
Then
your
I
hat in
might,
there? You would.
maybe. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, for
Uh,
those who are following who don't know the Hebrew term, Haredi is ultra orthodox. We're talking about the existing two ultra orthodox parties that are in the Knesset and in the government as well, and a third one that indeed may be emerging, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Rolene, how do the polls affect you? You're in media, like Erica. You follow this a lot closer than perhaps many of us.
I watch them out of interest and curiosity, but I don't hedge my vote bets on what the polls say. You know, every news channel has a different performing poll. So I think that they're an interesting barometer on that specific day where people are holding. But you know, I wouldn't go by, or I'm not influenced by what the polls say. I'm more influenced by my personal set of values and how I want to see the future of this country going, rather than what the polls are saying. And you know, I just want to touch on that point about total victory. You know, I don't think that there's any government on earth that can deliver a total victory. I think that we've got an image in our mind's eye of what we think a total victory would look like. But I think when you take it to the battlefield and you add in all the other elements, I don't think that's achievable. But what I will say is that on issues of security, I think you would be far pressed to find any of these candidates that differ too much on the issue of security. I think where we see differences of opinions and differences of platform points is more domestically. So I think we have to just be aware of what is realistic to achieve and how we move forward as a country.
Okay, good observation. Let's jump into the new parties because, as I said at the leading the question about the polls, I am being influenced by the polls because I'm very curious, and I'm very interested in the new parties. Although you've all helped me realize, and I think, I know, Arnie, you said it. Yeah, it's actually quite ridiculous at this point to be looking at the polls because even 2 months from now, when we're 2 weeks away from the election, still might be a little bit far out to know what polls are and parties coming together as alliance and maybe someone will drop out or merge. There are a lot of variables, but nevertheless, and I don't know how many indeed new parties there are, but there are several that are getting a lot of press time, a lot of media attention that I want to go through. And we can discuss it. I want to discuss it in terms of, first of all, Rolene, I really like what you just said, and I'm curious how it will evolve around these parties. That on security, we're going to be more or less in the same range, that no one's going to diverge that far one way or the other. If I'm paraphrasing what you said, okay, good, I did a good job. And, but there are a lot of other domestic issues, and I'm conflicted myself, and I want you all to kind of respond to this because as I look for, I think the litmus test that many of us are indeed looking for are quality people, quality lists. With the new parties, by the way, there are virtually no lists. There might be 2 or 3 names at the top, but they haven't presented bigger formal lists yet to be considered. I can't help but wondering a little bit more than rhetorically if some of these new parties that are emerging, and they're all pretty much on the right, are emerging because people who are peeling off of other parties realize that they don't have a political home anymore. So the only way to get into the Knesset is by being one, two, or three on a new list, and then getting into making a deal to come into the government. So I kind of look at it, and maybe Erica, you'll particularly like the cynicism that I'm about to say, that they're looking just to salvage a career. Yet I tend to think that I think some of them are more bald faced about that, and some of them are perhaps actually really decent people who want to see good for the country. And before we get into the parties, I would love any comments generally about what you're seeing as these parties emerge, and a few others are being touted. The new ultra orthodox party that Erica mentioned is not yet official, I don't think, but that's anticipated. Anyone want to jump
Yeah,
in about what
Yeah,
we're
I have.
seeing in
I
general?
I would say that in
Okay.
general, I like the idea that new parties exist because they sort of force the established parties to take note of a particular issue. They're usually single issue parties or one or two issues. And so the establishment has to respond because they're getting, as Erica said, they're getting a lot of immediate attention. On the other hand, of course, they're getting too much attention, like that mosquito that you had mentioned. And so it's sometimes distracting from what's actually happening. So it would be a lot easier if many of the smaller parties just decided, let's get together, let's form with group X, Y, or Z, and just, fit in where we best can.
Okay.
Okay, there's something I heard of an interview, it may have been in Hebrew, with Gilad Erdan, who had worked his way up through Likud, and he was our ambassador to the United Nations in recent years and made it back to Israel. Now, there are a lot of people who had been in Likud, Knesset members, and they're leaving Likud now. And I think that Erdogan's reason for the fact that he decided he was better off leaving is that he said, I did very well in Likud. Maybe there would be a chance. There are basically a whole bunch of hopefuls waiting in the wings because he's a generation younger than Bibi. I mean, Bibi's my age. He's the age of my oldest daughter, so I'd say
Yeah.
the generation younger. It's a lot of competition, and Bibi is now was also given an awful lot of the numbers in the safe seats that he can put his own people in,
Yeah.
and he's not going
Meaning,
to put in
meaning,
everyone.
but let's define what that means. But we're getting into some of the woods a little
Okay,
bit, which
so
is not
Gilad Erdan said that he felt that he had a better chance of a political future if he left Likud.
okay. That's an honest statement. Go ahead, Erica.
I think there's some of that, absolutely, but I think there's a lot of sincerity. I think particularly among this possible Haredi party, because people have nowhere to turn otherwise. Either you do what the rabbis tell you, or where do you go? There's not much of a spectrum in the ultra Orthodox. And then I think also the reservist party. Tropper and Yoas Hendel, I've always waited for their party. I wanted to see what would happen after the war because I think we all felt that in this government there weren't a lot of people to look up to, people of values, but there were people in the army that we could feel hope about, that they were wonderful and they actually had principles, and I wanted them personally to lead the nation. So I'm very glad they're putting together something.
When
I
you
just
say them, you mean those kind of people.
Right, those kind of people that served out of principle and continue to hold those principles. I hope they don't lose them in politics. It's a really dirty game. But I was waiting for that party to come. So I'm really glad it did.
Okay.
And I just want it to join something viable. I don't want
Okay.
them to get lost because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, they do not want to be in a coalition with Yair Golan.
Right. I want to come back to the
Right,
nature of all of
right.
these parties.
Right, but I just don't want them to get lost on one issue. I want them to continue forward on this path and join with a party where they actually can get some of that done.
Okay,
So,
okay. Rolene, Mark, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I want to just add on what Erica said about also about these specific people, but with the whole thing of having a Miluimnik party, especially Chili Chopper and
Reservist.
Miluim
yeah,
is
the
reservist,
Miluim
yes.
Reservist Party, yeah. Is that in the end what I think is going to happen with a lot of these parties, like the center-right parties, of people who aren't really outsiders? These are people who've been in politics for decades. Gilad Erdan and Chili Tropper and Yoaz Hendel and Zvi
Right.
Hauser and all these people have been there for a long time. Benny Gantz, who's also in a small party now and is also picking up a lot of people who are being touted as outsiders, a lot of former military people. And in the end, what I feel like they're going to end up doing, and is also backed up in history, is that they will use this to leverage and get positions in already established parties, or as separate factions, or in technical blocks with a lot of these parties. Like what's
It's
happened before with Avi Mose, with Noam, whatever he's calling his party now.
Yep.
And that's what just to like leverage to get power.
Well, a little bit more mainstream than Avi Maoz. We saw, I don't remember which election, Gideon Sar, who's our current foreign minister, break off from Likud after challenging
He came back.
Bibi and then forming his own party. And then after the war began, coming in to support the coalition and now merging back into Likud, where he's getting one of the guaranteed seats because he's not going to win any votes from average Likud voters like Batya, and yet his
I'm not a
little
Likud voter. I'm a member, but I'm not a
a Likud
voter.
member, excuse me, thank you for the clarification. And then, but yet his little faction of, I think there were four people, has now split apart, and there may be yet another one parties being spun out of it. So fascinating comment on that, Mark. Rolene, do you want to add anything generally about the what your observation on the new parties and what's the motivation?
I think for me, a lot of the motivation is these people who want to either enter politics for the first time or are seasoned politicians have grown disillusioned with what they have seen in the last now nearly 4 years and are looking for a way to course correct. I think if we look at the Likud, we haven't seen any good succession planning. It was reported in the media a couple of days ago that Barkat and others, shortly after the 7th of October, tried to depose Netanyahu. And I think there's a lot of concern, and I really don't want to attack the candidate, but there's a lot of concern around how we are viewed internationally, that there has been no taking of responsibility for the 7th of October. And I think a lot of these smaller parties are popping up because either they feel politically homeless or they're looking for a way to dilute the Likud juggernaut and the influence of Netanyahu. And should we also go to the inevitable coalition forming, that there will be more options out there that can also perhaps torpedo this reliance on the ultra-Orthodox and some of the other candidates from other parties who have been viewed domestically and internationally as severely harming the reputation of Israel. And I think they're looking at different and creative ways to ensure this doesn't happen again. I think
Okay.
that a lot of it has to do with political homelessness and an opportunity to try in their way to course correct.
So I want to jump into a math problem in a moment before we get into the actual issue of who are the parties, because I'm really curious. You'll help me think about this. I picked all of you to be on this panel because I like and respect you. So here you're my therapy, trying to figure out who Jonathan's going to vote for. The 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 three it appears, let's say this, that the main parties that have popped up or will be popping up are center right. And that means intuitively to me that those will be pulling votes away from the Bennett Lapid
Likud.
party, Eisenkot, but certainly from the right, from Likud and possibly Ben Gvir and Smotrich, that's not what
The
I don't even
last
remember
two.
what the parties are called. My there was an article that I shared with all of you today showing that I think it was an article or maybe it was on TV. I don't remember anymore. That these parties, most of which today wouldn't pass the threshold, means if each of them get enough for two votes, that's 6, 7, or 8 potential votes that will literally get wasted. That scenario, how does that impact the right versus the existing coalition for others? Because I'm having a hard time figuring out if the assumption is that they pull mostly from the center right, can anyone help mathematically to understand, or is that too
I don't
too
think we know.
nebulous still?
I don't think we have enough information yet. It's all theory right now, but in general, you want to see, like, if it's 3 weeks before the election, we'll have a much better idea as to who's going to pass the threshold or be close to it and whether you should vote for them
Okay.
because you want to see them in or not, uh, or you don't vote for them because you don't want them to get into the Knesset. But at this point,
Too soon.
I think it's too soon to discuss
Okay.
if
Okay.
they're
And there's
pulling from,
nodding, so fine.
because when we talk about center right, are we talking about center left? Because a lot of people might view some of those parties as center left and not
Okay.
center right.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
you know,
Okay. All
I
right.
just have a dream of like a unity government, and I wish they could all work out their differences and just come
ego.
together and like we could all vote for a party that we could actually like mostly find a home in because I think the voters are homeless too in a lot of ways. So
What do you mean, Erica, a unity party?
like a unity government, like
Government.
a unity,
A
like all
government,
these
sorry.
center right, center left, like, or these three parties, maybe they have more in common than what divides them. So why can't they just come together and get all the votes? Like,
The
why are
top
they?
three parties,
Yeah, why don't?
rather than a coalition, a BB block and an anti-BB block, using
Right,
what Mark
stop
was saying
wasting
before.
our time. We've seen this all before, and it's just such a waste of time and energy. I just think it's a joke. Like, I
Okay.
just wish they would like be adults and just put their egos aside and actually do policy and actually think about the country. And I think some of them do, but they really need to just sit down and hash it out. They can just get around the
Let,
table, please.
let's
That's
jump
my feeling.
into some of the new parties. And what I like to do is I want to go through the ones that we are going to discuss. I don't want to do a whole round robin of everyone necessarily giving input on each one. That'll go forever because there are several of them. But I do want to ask any of you to want to comment on any one particular one of them to please do so. And likes and dislikes and what they stand for and
How about
whether they're appeal. Go ahead, Arnie.
how about you just limit it? We get one sentence. Yes,
Okay.
no.
Well,
A
that's a
run-on
challenge.
sentence?
I know my audience. Let's see. But if people have something that's really important to contribute, I don't want to stifle it. But let's just keep focused on what we're feeling about them, or maybe what you think other Israelis are. So let me list the parties so we get that out of the way. The people and the parties. There's a new party called the Zionist Home, which is the Reservists, which we've discussed now by Yoaz Hendel and Chili Tropper, both of whom are former members of Knesset on different parties who have now broken away and established their own party. We have the Unity Party. That was a clever marketing uh, branding experience with Gilad Erdan and Yuli Edelstein, both former Likud members, longtime Likud members, and cabinet members who have broken away and started their own. We have Sharon Haskell, who's created the Israel First Party. She was Likud. She went away from Likud and joined Gidon Saar's New Hope Party, and then she quit New Hope, and now she's starting her own party called Israel First. I don't know if she has anyone as her number two. We've spoken about the potential new ultra-Orthodox party under the auspices of Moti Leitner and Eli Yishai, who was the former head of one of the existing ultra-Orthodox parties called Shas. We have a party that I was debating even whether to bring up here, but I think, Arnie, you've mentioned her before, and because she's got really good English, at least among Anglos, Einat Wilf and her Oz party are at least being spoken about in many of our circles. I was a little bit bold and put in Ram, which is the Arab Islamist party, but they're not a new party, but they potentially may be on the verge of rebranding by bringing in an Israeli Jewish Zionist who's just broken away from Yesh Atid, from Yair Lapid's party, and that could be revolutionary. I don't know if it's appropriate. And Mark, you had said today to mention Omdim Biyachad under the auspices of Rula Daoud. I know nothing about them, so I want to ask you to start with them, because I'm assuming that yes, indeed, that's a new party by the sound of the name Omdim Biyachad, which means standing together. I assume that that's a Jewish Arab party, but enlighten us.
Yeah, so they're an offshoot of Omdim Biafra, which is a social organization. They call themselves Makom Lekulam. They're an actual Israeli party. They've had their primary elections already, and they have a list. And what their whole thing is to take votes away from Hadash as this um, Jewish Arab Cooperation
Oh,
Party
listen.
who are on the left, and not necessarily Zionist, but they do have a big mix of also religious Jews and Arabs, and more on the left,
And,
but
and so
really to
so
compete with Hadash.
so and Hadash is one of the three standing Arab parties that are a
Yeah.
member of the Knesset. That's the communist one that has
Yeah,
one
that's the
Jewish.
communist one. Yeah, they're actually a Jewish Arab party. They're not. They're called in what's on the media as an Arab party, but they're not an Arab nationalist party like Balad or like Ram, which is a
Okay,
common misconception
okay, thank
in
you.
what's in Israeli politics.
Okay, excellent. Let's start at the top of my list. Zionist Home Reservists. We've already spoken about them a lot. I have my feelings, but I'm interested in any of yours.
Yeah,
I
Kaylee,
don't know if the people who started it are the reservists, or they've just adopted the name for electioneering.
Good question.
I don't think they would do that. I think there's so much scrutiny when it comes to forming political parties and being candidates. I don't think people are going to do that.
Okay, well, we don't. So
That's
none of
what
us
they
know.
did.
For
That's what
sure,
they did.
they were both in the reserves, right? But they may be too old for that at this point. But we're speaking about Yoaz Hendel and Chili Troper. Does that whether they indeed are currently have been in the reserves or not since October 7th or in general? Any insight on
Yeah.
them? Why are they
Kaylee,
unique? Why are they outstanding? Arnie.
Kaylee Tropper is one of my most favorite people in the Knesset. I would trust him completely. Whether I vote for his party or not, I don't know. Undecided. But he is certainly top five in terms of just being a good human being that you can go with. Absolutely.
Okay, Mark, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to mention about Yoas Hendel. Yoas Hendel has actually done a lot of Miluim since October 7th,
Right.
and has actually been pretty big about Miluimnik rights, especially with Chok Gius. He was
So
very vocal.
translation, of course.
Draft law.
The enlistment law.
Enlistment
The
law that's affecting the
the
ultra orthodox.
draft law,
Yeah,
not enlistment. Enlistment is
Draft
more
law, correct.
Well,
voluntary.
that's what
yeah,
excited me
draft law.
about the reservist party. The fact that he had been in active duty during October 7th. He was actually walking the
Yes.
walk. And unlike everyone else in the Knesset.
So we like them at least as a matter of integrity, and Erica and Arnie, I think hit some of your sweet spots in terms of new faces, new blood, integrity, and something that I think all Israelis, were polarized on it, but all Israelis are concerned about this draft law as it's going to affect the
Right.
ultra Orthodox. Okay,
It,
anyone else?
it doesn't, it affects the rest of the country because the extreme left, their kids get out for various reasons or they get desk jobs. And then you have the Haredim who claim that they're too busy in the in the study
Right.
hall, but they
It
can
affects
break
us
up
all, and
that
it's
they
very polar.
can, yeah, it's
It affects us all, and
but
it's
I,
very polarizing.
yeah.
Which is why we mentioned the party of Einat Wilf that I brought up earlier.
Go ahead.
I like her as well. She's draft for all. She believes strongly that every
Draft or
state.
national service?
Okay, so now we have to explain how the system works here. Everybody has to be drafted. If you choose to be exempted
Correct.
from the,
Correct.
if you choose to be exempted from the draft, you can choose to do national service instead, which would include working in a hospital, working for nonprofits, working in a school, etc. And that she wants to see everybody, Arab, Jew, ultra Orthodox, doesn't matter who, to be part of that system 100%. And
I
so,
think a lot
and
of, yeah, a lot of Israelis agree with that. They just
yes,
want to see some allegiance to the state, some sort of allegiance, you know,
But
Okay.
what else
or
Uh,
to
does
the
she
state
say?
or to the country or to the people at least. Like, you don't have to agree with the, the Zionist entity or the this current government, or, say this is not going to be when the Messiah comes, this is not going to be the government, but at least have some sort of allegiance. Like, and don't try to say that you're different and you're an exception, and just be a part of it. Work in a hospital, do something. Yeah.
the work in the hospital, for those who don't know, that Erica's alluding to, is what goes into the national service component, which is like by American standards would be like having a domestic Peace Corps, where people in place of doing military can work in various hospitals, government offices, social welfare, etc. And that's something that I think that I don't know enough about Einat Wilf and her O's party, but I think that the issue of the ultra orthodox draft is now kind of dragging in for the rest of us, and the rest of us means also the 20% of the country that are Arabs, and that's not a universal statement that people are making. Anyone else quickly about Einat Wilf that they want to add and her party? I was
I
impressed in
really,
looking. Go ahead.
oh, sorry, go on. What were you going to say? You were
I was just going
impressed?
to say, I looked at her website today for some reason, and I was impressed that on the pull down, she's got 4 languages: English, Hebrew, Arabic, and Russian. So she's really, truly trying to appeal to everybody.
She's very smart and she really gets it. And I like her very much. I'm just wondering what her game plan is, because it doesn't seem like she's doing much with her party. Like, I want to
they're
see, like,
having parlor meetings.
right,
Um,
exactly. And I want to see if there's anyone that's with her and, where she's going. I want
she
her, I
may
like her,
Okay.
but
she may be hoping this happens also seems to be that a lot of those with the smaller parties are hoping that somebody will bring them in, or they're going to get together with
Good
others
point.
because otherwise
Yeah,
Good
it's a
point.
loss.
that's the
Good
coalition.
point. Good point. Okay. Gilad Erdan and Yuli Edelstein, two recent former defectors from Likud, who it's funny, Bachi, when you were mentioning Erdan and being in the UN, I've always viewed that as with the exception of Netanyahu, who successfully came from the United Nations position and then became prime minister very quickly, and that was in the 90s, and now much of those years since he's been prime minister, certainly the longest serving prime minister. Nobody has made that transition successfully, and I feel like Gilad Erdan specifically is just lost his political base by being in exile. I don't mean literally, but by being away and didn't have a place, so it made sense for him to start a new party. Anyone else want to comment on the two of them, and perhaps,
Oh,
as long as we've mentioned the previous party, where they might differ?
Well, I was going to say good for them for splitting and sticking up for what they believe in. Um, Netanyahu traditionally, for the last 20 years, has not groomed a successor. There have been many who have gotten very close to him and become what we would call, in the United States, a vice president, somebody who would be next in line, etc. And each and every time, it seems that Netanyahu has done something to move them aside, lower them, put them in exile, whatever. And so it's nice to see some of the former leaders, Sharon Haskell as well, to just stick up and say, "Hey, we're not gonna stand for it anymore."
Well, that's
Okay.
how Naftali Bennett is one of
And
those.
Bennett as well,
He
yes,
was, so this is it. What's happening is we've a whole generation is not being given a chance to serve in the top,
right.
and it's
Within Likud, correct. Correct. He's
but it's the
isolated
whole
many.
country. We don't have a different prime minister. We've had
Correct.
the same prime minister for a very long
No
time.
disagreement, but I want to focus on the new parties right now. We know that
Yeah.
that's a
So
so
a
I'm
lot of
pulling it
them,
back.
yeah, but a lot of these new parties, when you look at what they're saying, they're all saying the same thing. It's just a
Okay.
matter of different personalities.
All right. So does anyone have any comments specifically about other than Arnie? Good for them. Uh, Erdogan and Edelstein and establishing a new party. I believe they've distinguished themselves by saying that they won't be in a government with Yair Golan and the Democratium, the Democrats on the left. Mark, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to actually run as their own party. I think what will probably happen is that they will use this power and this electoral power that they're going to get in order to leverage it to get seats in
Right.
a different which in a different party in the
I
end.
agree.
Do
It's
you
not gonna
think that
last.
party would be
And you
Likud?
have
I don't think it will be Liv. I think it might be Eisenkot or
Okay.
Bennett.
Right.
That's what I think personally,
Okay.
based on who these people are and they've done in the past.
so
Erica, you were going to say
Eisen
something?
No, I was going to say the exact same thing. I
Okay.
don't think they're going to last. I think it's a move, and I'm happy they did it. They were like trusty lieutenants. I think Adelstein's a good guy, and like, but I'm waiting to see where he lands too. I don't take it
So
seriously.
So
Yeah.
everyone is making their own sandbox to play in rather than playing nicely together until they realize that it's very lonely and they need a bigger sandbox. Yeah?
well, you also have Eisenkot, who had been very
Not a new
powerful.
party. Not a new party. I'm not letting you go there. We're talking about new parties now.
Because
New
you were talking
parties.
about Eisenkot just before,
Well, but
and he's never said anything about his uh part being part of the disaster. He's
we'll come to Eisenkot and the parties in another conversation. I want to finish off this round of talking about the new parties. The Erica, you seemed not only interested but even a potential supporter of a new ultra orthodox party that could be announced in the coming weeks. Presumably, that would draw ultra Orthodox voters who don't want to be constrained by what their communities have traditionally done because they don't see that that's getting them far in the society. But you actually expressed that if they were going to pass the threshold, that you might even consider voting for them. Any additional thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a pretty nice move and a bold one and one that's very needed. I don't know like where they're going to go. It's hard to vote for a party like that because then you're just waiting for 4 seats and you want to make sure the main party gets in. I would love for them. I really don't know how to maneuver it because I would love for them to be absorbed in a good place in the coalition. Unfortunately, it always comes down to that. But
Right.
I think it's a good challenge to the ultra Orthodox. They need it. There has to be some other way. This is not working. And the fact that someone's coming out and saying, okay, we're breaking away, and they can dismiss them and say, well, they serve in the IDF, so they're not real ultra Orthodox. But still, there's people that will kind of begin thinking otherwise. So just like it's like a Yasher Koach, like a more power to you. And then if there's a real possibility of them getting in and it really was tight, but there was a good, then I might, because
Okay. The
votes count, but
yeah.
it would really count for that.
The biggest
So
problem the biggest problem in
uh,
the ultra-Orthodox world, like you said, they would draw votes from other
I'm
ultra-Orthodox.
hoping, I
No,
really,
but the
but
people in the ultra-Orthodox world vote according to, sadly, what the rabbi says. There's a head rabbi of each of the divisions within the ultra-Orthodox, and they pretty much dictate what the masses will do. And
right, but they're not in the ballot box with, they're not in the booth with them, and people lie to the
yeah,
polls, and like maybe we'll have a few, maybe it just enters their minds. It's the beginning of a
maybe,
thought that ultimately in 10, 20 years changes things. Like
If
it, yeah.
if somebody wants to research that, or maybe I will, because it's actually very curious, in Beitar Elite, in Modi'in Elite, in other large cities that are largely ultra Orthodox, where was the vote spread in the last couple of times? My sense was a few small numbers, but still people broke from those traditional votes,
Hmm.
and if presented with a party like this, except for the fact that Eli Yishai is Sephardi, and I don't know if Ashkenazi ultra Orthodox voters will vote for someone who's Sephardi. But Eli Yishai also served in the army. It'll be interesting. Anyone else have a comment about that party
No, and
specifically?
Eli Yishai always impressed me as a decent guy.
Yeah, he was
Um,
fantastic. That's why he was kicked out.
Wow.
right.
Well,
He was
he was
really very impressive.
he got
One
he
thing
got
we
kicked out.
left,
He got kicked out when what's his name,
Derry.
the current,
Terry?
when Aryeh Deri came out of prison
right.
and took his place back at the head of Shas.
Yeah, it was a
So
horrible
we
thing.
have that party that is headed, unfortunately, I'm sorry to see this, as by a scumbag. And then we have Eli Yishai, who I'm glad to see is back. And then we have Likud, which a lot of people think is filled with scumbags.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's funny. Like, at least we
Okay.
have some decent people in these small factions.
All
I am
right.
not
We
representing any media right now, by the way.
Okay.
That's purely my
Thank you.
personal opinion.
Thank you.
we
Enjoy.
left out something interesting about the Gilad Yulietstein, that
Yeah,
they have with them Eliza Bloch, the former
that's
Beit
Right.
true.
Shemesh mayor, and she's whatever, she's religious, Torah observant, and she was then like not part of the usual Beit Shemesh ultra Orthodox crowd, and the fact that she has joined in with Gilad Erdan and Yuli Edelstein is fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you for all of that. I would like to move forward and segue, um, specifically as it relates to these parties, but now we can get into the bigger ones. A lot, it seems, and I haven't been keeping score, but it seems that just about every political party has made some kind of statement, one way or another, that they will, or that they will not form a government with a non-Zionist party. Now, when I read non-Zionist, I hear non-Zionist, I think the Arab parties. But I also think, okay, thank you for shaking your head, Erica. I also think that that's more and more referring to the ultra orthodox parties, the existing ones. But I think that
Yes.
if we were having this conversation 3 years ago today, before the war, we wouldn't necessarily be referring to, even though they are, wouldn't necessarily be referring to the ultra orthodox parties as non-Zionist. So I'm curious to any of your thoughts about the idea of part of people actually stating that they won't do this when we've seen it broken in the past. And Mark, I'm going to come to you first, because if only the Arab parties are referred to, I'm curious what your thoughts are on everyone saying no, we're not going to sit with an Arab party.
Yeah, so what I said, I think in one of the previous episodes was that when a lot of people come and they come out and make these statements that they're going to what we're going to not deal with or not form a coalition with the Arab parties. What they're saying is that they're not going to cooperate with a population that is, they're going to exclude a population that is, what, 20% of Israel's population
Correct.
are the
Yes.
Arabs. And that's what I think what is really genius with what Ram's doing, which with the Yoav Segalovich, with the former, what he was a police chief, I think, where
Ah,
he was
correct.
for his politician, right? He was actually also police chief, like
A
a very
Jewish
high up
Zionist Israeli.
a Jewish Zionist Israeli. He was also the chief of police, and that's
Yep.
one of the big issues in the Arab community is the
Yeah.
violence, which is after decades of neglect in a very social economic poor community in Israel, which is also 20% of the Israel's population, and that what I think is actually going to change how how the Israeli parties talk about not collaborating with Ram which is an actual Arab party.
Okay, and Ram is known as an Islamist party, but I'm curious, Mark, and in general, if they do bring in Yoav Segalovich and have this Jewish guy as number two or number three on their list, and they typically get 4 or 5 seats in the Knesset, do you think that moves Ram from being branded non-Zionist?
Yeah, definitely. I maybe not make it be non-Zionist, but I think it will normalize actually collaborating with non-Zionist parties
As opposed to
Specifically Ram.
anti-Zionist.
Right, they're the
or
most
anti-Zionist. I don't think it's
palatable.
really any
Okay,
difference, really.
okay, okay. What? Anyone else
But
on
but
the? Go ahead, Arnie.
Mansour Abbas stayed around for a while within the government, and
Hmm.
so it's not completely without precedent already.
No, it's not without precedent. But even Naftali Bennett and I think Lapid, but I might be wrong, who had that coalition in which Mansour Abbas was a member. Naftali Bennett for sure has said he's not serving with
Yeah,
non-Zionist parties. He's going to
yeah,
lie again,
everybody lies.
again,
Maybe he's
twice.
talking about the Haredim. I don't think he's lying. I mean, I don't have a
I don't
problem with
know.
him sitting with the Arabs. Like, I think he means like the draft dodgers.
Okay,
I
that's
don't
it.
know. It's not that he's not lying because, I'm not naive enough to say he wouldn't tell a lie, but maybe that's what he means.
Let's see.
He's
Time will
Rolene,
not
what
a
are
tell.
your
known liar like certain people, but I'll let everyone
Ro-
interpret that for themselves.
okay?
But yeah, I think that's what he means. And I was going to say, I know we're not there yet. I'm sorry, but I think the major issue for Naftali Bennett is that a lot of people are angry at him, and he lied to them at the when they voted for him, they expected a certain thing, and he gave them something entirely different. I don't agree with them, but I think he has to answer that question.
Okay,
So, yeah.
okay. Rolene, what do you think about the idea of people and parties stating that they will not serve or form a coalition with a non-Zionist party? What does that mean, and what do you think about it?
Yeah, they say this now until it comes to the inevitable horse trading and they have to form a coalition. Let's see then. But I would be curious to see if not sitting with a non-Zionist party also includes the Haredim, because let's see what they do when it comes to the actual coalition forming. People say one thing on the election trail and another thing when they're in government and have to hustle for their seats.
Well,
So
it's an interesting point that you just raised because if we just put all of the Arab parties in a bag and say, okay, that's non-Zionist, and we put all the ultra-Orthodox parties in a bag and say non-Zionist, but Ram might bring in Ram, which is an Arab party, a Muslim party that served in the government previously, and if we create a new ultra-Orthodox party of people who are not only have served in the army but are for army service, then we have to ultimately press the point with all of these people by what do they mean as far as non-Zionist, which is a which I think goes to Erica what you were saying earlier. What does it mean? We need the Rashi, the rabbinic commentary on all of this, and really order to understand it.
But
Arnie,
you won't get to 61 seats out of the 120 with at those two slices at the extremes.
unless we have Erica's fantasy, which is four parties establishing a unity government
Right,
Yalla.
as
But
without
then
any of them.
you
Or
have
kind of law.
one more thing that Bibi started doing until Bennett stopped him. He became serial interim government.
Ah,
So
ah,
the ruling party continues if there's no coalition.
right.
And Bibi
correct.
found it easier, and he did this 2, 3 times at least. He just continued as interim government, made sure that the next elections were put off as far as possible. And it was much easier to rule because there was no such thing as being voted out because he was
Excellent point.
interim.
Excellent point. I'm glad you mentioned that because as much as there were many other things that I would like to bring up, I guess we're going to follow the what's it, the statement of leaving people wanting more. So for everyone who's following, we're going to leave you wanting more. I'm leaving lots of the questions and topics just that I had thought we would talk about today for a future conversation. The next one will be September 16th. Those of you who have registered for this will get the invitation for that first. And for those who are just following it, please be in touch at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com and we'll get you that invitation if you don't get them automatically. But I want to use this before I invite Jen Mallon. In fact, Jen Mallon is a good friend in Tampa. Let's see if I can promote Jen to panelist. Jen is going to close us before I do my announcements at the end in prayer. But Batya, you just raised the point that I wanted to end with and ask all of you whether you have any based. And I know I'm going back to polls, but it's polls and it's intuition based on where we're standing now. Okay, and that's where polls are. They're taking the temperature now. You all constitute a poll of one sort. Are we going to end up in a situation that after the election October 27th and about 2 weeks before the president declares a week before the president declares who will be given the first shot to form the government, and that can go on for 30, and then I believe can be renewed for another 30 days. We're now into January before any potential government could be formed, and then a next person can be given a shot and also might not be able to form a government. What's your sense or even prediction, if you like to be that bold, as to whether in the first half of 2027 we're going to be finding Benjamin Netanyahu still as prime minister in a caretaker government because we can't form a new government and new elections sometime in the late spring or early summer. Anyone?
That's what Bibi's praying for.
Erica?
I think there's two scenarios. I think BB might actually win the popular, like not the popular. He might be able to, MacGyver together a coalition, and he still has enough support, from the BB for Life voters, who I think are still very many. And he did get people that were upset with him over October 7th and won't vote finally for him, but a lot of people will still vote for him. As long as he's the head of the Likud, we might just have the same exact thing we have right now. So that might happen. I think there's a chance we have some sort of Zionist government. Maybe they can get it together. I'm hopeful. I'm going with hope, not
Okay.
a new hope, an old
You
hope.
you always leave us with inspiring thoughts, Erica. That's good. Rolene, what are your thoughts about maybe what's going to happen in 27, whether we're gonna have a new government or a new election?
Uh, it's a difficult one to call. I mean, we've come out of a situation before where we had how many elections in a matter of months, 5 elections. Let's see what's going to happen. Is Bibi going to be Teflon Bibi again? Who knows? Let's see what's going to happen. I don't want to put my head on a block and call it.
Okay. Mark, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. I'm going to shoot from the hip. I think that we're going to have left, center left, or center right. I don't even know what to call it. Center government, like a Memshulat Shinoi, with a very small majority. But I think it's when it's going to happen.
Inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah.
Arnie?
Change. It's got to come.
Change. Arnie, did you have any last comment? I don't know you commented
Yeah.
on this.
No,
Yeah, what?
yes, I agree. No, I think I think strongly that the people will come through to vote. There's a whole issue we didn't talk about, people from overseas, Israelis who, since there's no absentee balloting, Israelis from overseas have to show up to vote in person. And there are movements afoot on both the left and the right to get those overseas voters here to see if that adds up to more than 1% or 2 and make a change in the government as well. I we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the high holidays coming up right before the elections. Eric, you talked about prayer. Yalla, we got the prayer right there to do it.
Well, and I'll wrap that up before introducing Jen to close us in prayer. With now, as we conclude this conversation, it is officially the new month Elul here, and that's the month preceding Rosh Hashanah, in which we are kind of obligated to do a lot of self introspection. So hopefully, the people who represent these parties that are on pieces of paper behind me, and those who we've been talking about, and the parties themselves, and all of us will do a good bit of introspection, and maybe we'll get I don't know, the government, if not the government we deserve, at least the government we need. How's that? With that, and I'm grateful, all of you. I'm sorry Yehuda wasn't here. I don't know that we represented any of his thoughts specifically, though he challenged us with a few in our WhatsApp group. September 16th, I look forward to revisiting this again with you and new topics. And I want to, as we like to do, and it's important, especially considering the month and considering Arnie's closing point. Jen Mallon is a broadcaster, the host of Come Home with Jen, which is on CTN, and I've had the privilege of being on her program a couple of times. And last time she was here on Inspiration from Zion, we called the episode "Stranded or Planted." I was stranded in America, and Jen, I made the mistake of saying she was stranded here because of the beginning of the war with Iran, and she corrected me and said, "No, I'm planted here." Jen, I'm glad you got back, albeit if you would unmute yourself, and we would love to hear any closing thoughts and prayer you have before I just give our final announcements.
Thank you, Jonathan, and all the panelists. You were amazing. You gave me hope, and I feel very privileged for letting me just be a part of the conversation and to have a meaningful dialogue and hear your thoughts on these things. Although I resided there for 45 days, I'm not a citizen, but I felt like I was one, being there during the war. My husband, his grandfather's antiquities are at Yad Vashem, and he was a Jewish American war hero. And so we've been very immersed there since 2012. I do come from a political family. My baby cousin, is a United States senator. And so we're kind of in the throes of the primaries right now, and lots of ads and lots of conversations. And we do have a split family that half vote one way and half vote another. It's the human condition. But I am very prayerful for October the 27th. And so I just want to end in prayer. And once again, Jonathan, you said earlier that that if you were a good host, you are a good host. You are a great host.
Thank
and
you.
You always you always give us things to think about and to pray about. And so we are very grateful to you. So, Abba, as we just bring this important conversation to a close, I first want to bless and thank Jonathan for his leadership and just for the honor of listening tonight with his dear colleagues and friends. As a Gentile who loves Israel and the Jewish people, I Father, consider it a profound honor to be invited to pray. We just lift up the nation of Israel, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We thank you for the people of Israel. You see every family, every individual, every community, every leader, every soldier, every mother and father, and every citizen who carries the responsibility of deciding what Israel's future leadership should look like. In a season of many voices and many opinions and many different choices, I ask that you would give your people Israel's supernatural wisdom and understanding and insight for this Kairos season in time. Where there is confusion, I pray you would bring clarity. Where there is fear, I pray you would bring courage. Where there is division, I pray that you would make room for understanding. Where there is uncertainty, give discernment from above. Abba, raise up leaders who will govern with integrity and humility, with hazak and wisdom, leaders who understand the authority that is given them is a stewardship, and that the decisions made in this election will affect generations yet to be born. And I just think of Solomon. He asked you for a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. And so we come to you and we ask again for that kind of wisdom over those who need to lead Israel in this day and in this time. Guard this nation from manipulation, from division, from hatred, from violence. Protect the integrity of this election process. Protect those who serve. Protect the citizens who vote, and preserve the freedom for Israelis to disagree passionately while remembering that they remain one people. I think of Psalm 133, how good and how pleasant it is when brethren and sistren dwell together in unity, for there in unity is the command blessing. Now may there be shalom, not simply the absence of conflict, but wholeness and well-being and security and peace within Israel's gates. And as the psalmist declared, we continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Peace be within your walls, prosperity within your palaces. So we pray for wisdom in the Knesset. We pray for protection over Israel's borders. We pray for her sons and daughters serving in defense of their great nation. And we pray for the ordinary yet very extraordinary families who carry the burdens that they are faced with on a daily basis. We pray for Israel's relationship with the nations of the world. Abba, you alone see the end from the beginning. So above personalities or parties or polls or coalitions or political predictions, we just speak and agree that wisdom will prevail and that truth, your truth and justice will be honored, and righteous counsel will be heard, and that the people of Israel will be strengthened. May Jerusalem be secure, and may there be shalom be Israel, peace upon Israel. Amen.
Amen.
Jen, thank you so much. Thank you to the panelists. And as we conclude, it's appropriate and essential to thank the sponsors of this podcast and webinar series. First, Priscilla Flory, who's known in my home as my bonus mother, and has supported the Genesis 123 Foundation and its work from our inception. And also thanks to the Coin family as well for their meaningful sponsorship. Inspiration from Zion and all of the Genesis 123 Foundation programs are made possible by donations. So please consider joining us to help continue the dialogue and to build bridges. This episode is sponsored in memory of Helen Ross, the mother of our good friend and donor Doug Ross, who lost his mother last month. And Doug, we just pray that you will continue to have comfort from her memory and strength from all of the fine things that she brought you up into your wonderful life. If you'd like to sponsor a future episode in honor or memory of a loved one or special occasion, please be in touch at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com. We love to hear your comments always as part of a dialogue and invite you to send any questions as well, specifically questions you have about traditional Judaism for our Ask the Rabbi programs. Please share this with others who will also find it of interest and continue to join us right here where we bring you more meaningful conversations about unique topics relating to Israel that you won't hear anywhere else. Wherever you are in the world, I pray that you and your loved ones are all safe and healthy, and I send my blessings from right here in the Judean mountains. God bless you.